Okay, we're going live now. Hello, everybody. We are with AAC in the Cloud. Welcome for those of you who are just joining us. We appreciate you coming to the conference. I am Deborah Woodland. I'm a speech language pathologist who specializes in AAC from Victoria, British Columbia. And it is my pleasure to introduce Kelly Fonner and Beth Poss. And they're speaking about Power Your Core with STEAM. And I'm looking very much forward to it.
Hey, everybody. So let's get started, right? You guys, if you want to have access to the slides, and I sure hope we made them, Kelly, if you're in and you want to make them, I always forget if we made them public or private, you know. So if you want to do that while I'm in the background here, you should be able to go to the link bit.ly/AAC Core STEAM or use the QR code that is there. You should be able to access. I feel like the QR code keeps like dropping off, so hopefully you'll get it. If there's any problems, I'm sure somebody will put that in Slack, and we'll get that up there. Thank you. And if you want to make sure, we want to make sure that it's got open for you guys to request it. All right. So just really quickly, a little bit about me and then a little bit about Kelly. So I am employed as the Director of Educational Programs for Lesson Picks. I do independent inclusive technology advocacy and consulting. I'm a speech language pathologist, a member of ASHA, CEC, ISTE, and ISAC and USAC. I'm on the editorial board for ATOB. I am a board member of AAC accessible.org. I'm a former elementary school administrator, and I am the co-author of a just about to be released in print and just recently released as an ebook book, Inclusive Learning 365 EdTech Strategies for Every Day of the Year. You can connect with me on Twitter, on Instagram, by email, however you want. And I am talking fast just through this. I will not talk that fast with the rest of stuff, but I'm going to be flat out letting you guys know we have more content than we're going to get through today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let Kelly tell a little bit about herself.
Beth will continue to talk that quickly, just so you know. We've done this before. So my name's Kelly Fonner. Welcome. I do training and consulting in educational and assistive technologies. My background is as a special education teacher, and I continue to be a special ed teacher as I have a couple students virtually online who are staying online due to various reasons. But for most days I do training. We're back to some face-to-face training, which is really exciting, and consultation on students and in classrooms on the use of augmentative and alternative communication as it gets implemented within the school day, and also in the areas of literacy. So welcome as we expand your ideas of core.
We basically gave our disclosure, so we're all good there.
There we go. Yeah. So we want to use your skeleton key, wink, wink, to find out things about strategies to determine the focus on vocabulary in the context of STEAM. We're going to look at different techniques to expanding and using students' personal vocabulary. And also, it says that you're going to be able to regenerate one resource. I think we've got lots in here, but pick your favorite one.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about STEAM, and just so everybody's clear on what we mean by STEAM, STEAM is the acronym for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Mathematics. So just a little differentiation from STEM to STEAM, right? We want to get those arts in there as well. And we want to say that while we are talking about core a lot, we want to emphasize this is more than just core, that content specific fringe vocabulary is real important as well, that content vocabulary, and personal core fringe vocabulary that is of importance to an individual so that it becomes a part of their core. So we're not saying core only. We're not saying only talk in core, right? But we are saying that that core is really critical, but that fringe or that personal core is important too. And just to sort of put it in context for anybody who might be going, core, what did you mean by that? So when we talk about core vocabulary, it's that subset of words that research has shown makes up most of the language that we use in everyday conversation. So it's the most frequently used words, as opposed to fringe, which is used less frequently. The individual words are used less frequently. If you analyzed like a language sample from anybody, right? Now, the flip side to that is there is way more fringe vocabulary out there than there is core. Core is a small subset of that. And so again, that's just sort of the definition, and I'm not going to belabor it or read it out loud. But core vocabulary and fringe vocabulary is actually can be found across, it's not just an English language phenomenon, it is across languages with that. Okay.
And when we look at core, it's typically not nouns. And when we look at fringe, that might be used in the different arts and science and mathematics, we're often talking about nouns and descriptive words that are only used within that topic. And I want to make sure that people understand that, you know, as Beth said, we're talking about the importance of core and adding fringe. We're not talking about adding every fringe word that you would need in every curriculum area, right? So we also know that using descriptive teaching so that we can use those words. And we also, I'm going to have Beth change the page here. We also want to make sure that your child, your students have enough vocabulary so that that communication triangle is complete when you're talking about a content area, that when they want to introduce something that they're interested in that maybe went on in another part of the day, that it isn't always just about what's happening in the current context. And understanding that there's always this triangle that's going on between the sender of the information, the person who is their communication partner, or the person that they're talking to, the receiver of that communication, and somehow a topic is set. And making sure that both the receiver and the sender understand what that topic is really important. And that is why we also find that we need to use fringe words so that topics can get more specific. Click. Also, kind of defining out this word core, because I do a lot of consultation in schools, and I find that sometimes people confuse core vocabulary with sight word vocabulary. That when we're working in literacy and we're working on the words that we learn to sight read and the words that we put on word walls and the words that we learn to decode, those are to help us to read. Some of those words cross into the words that we communicate with across all areas in the way that, you know, Beth explained the 80%, but not all of those words. So if you are teaching sight words from a core word of the week perspective, you're mixing up two things. You're mixing up expressive communication with literacy. Like I said, there is some crossover, but it's not all crossover. We also want to say, you know, as we kind of dip now into the idea of science, technology, engineer, arts, and math, is that these are often the areas. For me as a resource teacher, it was the easiest to integrate my students into these classes as far as using their communication systems and assistive technology, because there are lots of generalization of skills that can happen across these content areas. And this is just a list from Patty King-DeBon and Caroline Musselwhite, you know, that in these classes, we can be taking turns. It doesn't just have to be in a reading situation. You know, we can be practicing using sign-in. We can practice with vocabulary. We can make sure that we're going across communicative functions, that we're not just answering questions, but we're a part of discussions, and students are initiating and commenting. Lots of commenting that can be happening in these classes. Getting in those quantitative concepts goes across the areas of STEAM, following and being a part of directions. All of this list here are things that go on in these classes and can be promoted within those classes. The other thing too, you'll see a variety of configurations for people who are full-time working in STEAM. And so this is one of the ones I particularly like because it really breaks it down from what, you know, was STEAM, and as Beth said, was built off of STEM, and then the arts were added. And then when you're looking at all of the components of each of these, there's so many areas within engineering and math and arts. You know, we think about science a lot, but also in the areas of technology. You know, I have students that are in the technology club and students that are using technology, and we're going to try and give you examples in all of these areas.
So I think we've all had some amazing opportunities to learn about from fabulous folks out there like Karen Erickson and David Copenhaver and a lot of other wonderful folks. Kelly's done a lot of work in this, Caroline Musselwhite, Deanna Wagner, some awesome people that are talking about the intersection of AAC and literacy. But we really wanted to stress that there is an intersection, not just for literacy instruction with that becoming competent communicators and being motivated to use that. So, you know, I like the way you think, right? We want to make sure that they are getting opportunities, not just in literacy instruction, to use their communication systems and to develop that communicative competency and those skills. So we talked about that idea of STEAM, and science is one of those pillars, but I wanted to think about, and that triangle, that pyramid that Kelly showed is really a great way to sort of look at some of this, in the sense that it, when you think about it, not so much as silos, but as things that very much cross over and intersect, right? You can't have science, like you can't have biology if you don't have math, and you can't have, you know, you can't have engineering if you don't have some basic other principles that are going to come from technology. There's all of that intersection. So there's a wonderful book out there that is called Who is a Scientist? It's not released yet. It's coming out in October. So let me say it's a book that's going to be out. It's a great children's book that is going to be out by Laura Gell. I really like it because the illustrations in it are photographs that show scientists of all differing abilities from all different places, and really makes it very powerful, that the idea that anybody can be a scientist. And it has wonderful repeated line throughout it of "I am a scientist." And I'm just going to show a really brief section of this book trailer. Can you guys hear the sound? No. It's not showing the sound. Okay, so don't worry about the sound. It's just some music right now. I guess I didn't have that all hooked up. So let me turn on the closed captions for that, right? So she's saying, I wrote the book to show scientists are real people. So I'm not going to, since the sound isn't coming through, I'm not going to take the time to do this, but so basically all of these individuals are introducing themselves and saying what they do and saying, I am a scientist. But what I love about it, it shows people that maybe don't look to someone as what their traditional thought of what a scientist would be. So just something for you guys to look at, and we'll go on to the next one, science, right? So along with that, I think my issue is how I've got my my microphone set up, and I'll fix that the next time that Kelly is talking instead of me. So I did mention I work for Lesson Picks. I'm going to show a few Lesson Picks examples in here, just a couple, but a great place to start with some of our science is that intersection of reading with it, right? There's so many great nonfiction books out there that investigate science. And so one of them is a great book by Ruth Heller called Chickens Aren't the Only Ones. And it's about learning about oviparous animals. I said that right, oviparous animals that lay eggs. And it talks about chickens aren't the only ones and what comes from an egg. There's a great video on here that, again, since right now, I'll fix that when Kelly's talking in a minute, that since my sound isn't coming through to that. But what I would encourage you guys to do is take a look at this video and think about the vocabulary that you would use, that students would use to be able to respond to this video about what comes from an egg. And let's see if I've got the captions. So it's got, so even thinking about the images that you're seeing, what vocabulary somebody might be using, right? So they might be talking about eat, they might say, happy. It might say open, right, for hatch there. So just as going through something that is nonfiction information, that is informational text, whether it is from a video or from a book, having that opportunity to use that vocabulary. And then I have a link. You'll see the link here. You'll be able to link to a great sorting activity, which I'll just flip over super fast right here. So a Lesson Picks activity that you can use within PowerPoint to be able to sort animals and what group they belong in. And so again, some of that core vocabulary that you might use with it to say, get it, put it here, put it there. But again, that fringe vocabulary that might be really important for this of birds and reptiles, amphibians, sharks and rays, mollusks, spiders, insects, and mammals. So being able to talk about those and then being able to utilize the features within the software to be able to do that's kind of a sorting activity. So I'm gonna click on to the next. Nope, I don't want it to play the video. Okay, so this is a great video that you actually don't need. And you actually don't need to hear the sound on. So what I want you guys to do in the chat is, so this is zoo animal cams are so fascinating to watch. This is one with otters. So it is from Curiosity Zoo. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but it's their river otter cam. So think about the vocabulary, core or fringe, that your communicators might be using as they watch this video. So go ahead and put that, if you guys are in Slack right now, go ahead and put that in the Slack chat. So some of the things that you might, and I'm thinking of things like play, look, I'll go, I see it, down, uh-oh, where,
Swim.
Yep, swim.
Go up, float. There's a lot of goes coming in on Slack.
Silly, right? So some other words that are maybe not your traditional core. Yep, Ashley says, go fast, watch out, here I come. He stands up on his tippy toes and goes down, right? So up and down.
Funny.
So just some of the language that you can use, and think of how age appropriate. This is not something that that you have to only do with elementary school, right? This would be so perfectly appropriate with older students as well. So just to sort of, and these are available at every zoo, all different animals. Think about students getting to pick the animal that they want to watch and then going and finding that on the, finding that camera, that zoo cam on there.
We've been watching eagles and eagles hatch within one of the local school districts that I'm at. We also wanted to pull for you, and we're not going to spend time going through all of these curriculum, but we wanted to give you some ideas of commercially available curricula that are out there that have basis of units that in science. And so you'll find that in Retopia. Several of the online units have a science basis. And then within Lesson Picks, there's a marriage between Retopia and Lesson Picks, where you can go on to Lesson Picks and have a core board and the fringe boards. So I have some students that have, plenty of core vocabulary to say a lot of the things that people have been suggesting. But then when we get into content areas, what do we do with that fringe? And so by having some of these companies that give you fringe boards, you can use those fringe boards for what you need. I have some students that at the end of a unit or during a unit, if there's words that they have that they love, those words then get programmed into their system. But we don't want to muck up the works of a robust vocabulary system by just pounding in lots of fringe vocabulary. But fringe that that you will use repeatedly is definitely something we want to suggest to people who are putting those systems together. You can use things like this on the side, some of these fringe categorical boards that Lesson Picks has to go around along with the themes of the units in Retopia. So take a look at those. And Beth has a nice explanation of it. If you just go into Lesson Picks and do search on Retopia, she's got a nice introductory document there for you.
I think it's actually, can you guys hear me? I fixed my microphone
Yes.
around. Okay, so it's actually linked right here on that. And just for you guys to know, this is all free. So Retopia is not free, but the boards on Lesson Picks, all the accompanying boards on Lesson Picks. So for those students that may not yet have a robust curriculum, may not yet have a robust system, or they have a robust system, but you want to have some additional access to some vocabulary that might not be able to be easily programmed on there or something. So those are free on there.
Some other companies that have science curricula are companies like Attainment. And Attainment has their own set of AAC systems and apps, but within these materials, they suggest vocabulary and how vocabulary can be used. So they're not at the point where they've got separate fringe boards, but certainly within the lessons, you'll see within lessons, images are used, and those images can be reproduced within the Imagine Art symbols that Attainment uses, or within many of the other symbolic systems. And again, it's about what vocabulary you're going to need to continue on. I have a student that the word ridiculous came up in one of the stories that he was reading, and he loved that word. And so that word got added into his system. So it's a great way. Beth talked about that idea of personal vocabulary. So you have personal vocabulary that students self-choose to add into their systems. Another company that many people use is the Unique Curriculum and the News to You newspaper from N2Y. One of the things that people are used to with them is that with the newspaper every week and with the individual monthly units comes a vocabulary communication board, and it will have core plus fringe. And for most of my students, we use the fringe vocabulary words off of that paired along with their core vocabulary that's in their system. Also know that if you have access to Unique, they have put together separate science units. So make sure that you're looking for the science and social studies units that are in there, that you're not just following along with whatever the monthly plan is. And also go into the library, go into the N2Y library when you're getting into a STEAM topic and see what books might already be there at the various levels. One of the other things that I have educators that will program for their students is this idea of following directions during labs. So if you're in some kind of a physics lab, or you're in a biology lab, or, you know, building a volcano that we do in some of the elementary years and others, is that, again, not all the steps of the one time we're going to do this lab needs to be programmed into a full robust language system. But you could have one of these single message, sequenced message devices programmed to have the directions, so that a student could be an active participant within their group, reminding people about the steps and directing the people in their lab group. There are some nice examples, because science fairs are a great place for interactive vocabulary. First of all, doing the experiment, making your report visual are all ways that we can use vocabulary to be expressive, active participants. There are some nice slide decks so if you do the slide deck templates and scripts, you know what I'll do, Beth, as you're talking, I'll put the link into Slack for this.
Okay, cool.
Because I see that it's missing off that page.
That's okay. Yeah. So let's, the slide decks is a good transition to talking a little bit about technology, and like just making sure my technology is all ready to go. So let's think about our learners and our communicators as programmers, right? We know that is one of the largest growing fields out there is in technology. And it is one of those fields where our students who have a range of complex disabilities, including physical disabilities and communication disabilities, where there may be fewer barriers physically to them being able to participate. So let's start off with them with some coding. There is a multitude of different apps out there and coding programs out there that work on coding. And the amazing thing about coding is it uses repetitive language. That is like the whole, and it loops, right? So that repetitive language circles back around and around and around. So here's an example from code.org and of an activity where you are programming in one of their Star Wars themed systems to build a sequence of events to solve a problem where R2-D2 is going to go and get some materials and resources that he needs, right? And that ability for them to set that up, move those things around. So there's the vocabulary, the language within the coding system has so many core words like move down, move up, move here, move there. Here and there aren't, it has to be more specific, like move left, move right? But stop and go again, right? If you want to repeat that. So sometimes you're going to repeat move down, move down, move down, move down multiple times to get a certain distance for that object to be able to move. So lots of those opportunities. And then think about that fringe and personal core vocabulary that you can do based on what that student's interests are, right? So if they're really into Star Wars, chances are they might already have R2-D2 or something as a part of that, or I'm not a star. I would need Chris Bouguet to chime in here because he'll know I'm not a Star Wars person to know much beyond that. So consider look at that. And this is linked. It's code.org is this one. There's lots of others out there. Coding activities, though, don't only have to happen with technology. So if you're thinking about, oh, well, they can't do the drag and drop or we have to do it with them, this can be taken completely offline, right? So there's a fabulous book that was just recently published by Josh Funk called How to Code a Sandcastle. He writes a lot of very science and technology oriented children's books, picture books. And in this one, he talks all about the concepts of coding. I love this book in particular because there's a young Black girl who is the primary character in it, along with her robot friend and her robot Pascal. And one of the, so we've made a follow-up, they talk a lot about low tech, how they have to, it's the whole activity is how you're going to get Pascal from point A to point B on the beach and helping him build she wants to come up with a better way to build a sandcastle. And so this is an example here. This was made in Lesson Picks. I'll actually go in, it should be linked, and I'll go in and set it as a free sample. So give me a little bit after the session. I'll set that one up as a free sample for everyone so anyone can download it. But the idea with this is at a low tech level, code directions for Pascal to get to the sandcastle. So it would be move forward, move forward. You know, you've got to then get around that beach ball, right? So you've got to move down, move left, or excuse me, move right. So all of those different ways where you've got to position him, having those things out. Think about having your students act that out with real objects around them and the language that's going to go with that. So many things around coding don't have to actually happen with the technology. But sometimes the technology is just so much fun. There's a link here, a video. Let's see if we get my audio working okay. You guys will tell me now whether the audio.
Yes,
Are we hearing it?
it's low, but it's there.
And then, of course, my dog. And actually, I'm going to pause it. So this is a great little video that talks about it, because I actually brought a friend with me to the session. So I have Dash right here, and I'm going to go ahead and pull my iPad over onto this main screen. I have the WonderWorks set up. And so again, I want you guys to be thinking, this is not just let me show off my fun toys. This is let me get you guys thinking about the kind of language that your communicators can be using when they're engaged in these types of activities. All right, so right, like with this one, I've got Dash. This is the WonderWorks activity. This is the WonderWorks app that's free. Of course, my daughter's texting me on there. I'm like, don't text me because I'm going to have my iPad up on a session and people will see what you're texting me. So I can add a sound to Dash, right? So like I can give him a curious sound or a frustrated sound or a happy sound. And so think about what kiddos are going to be able to communicate either doing this. I'm just simply dragging these on. And so I get to do whatever. So he actually, he says awesome. And then I connect it so that it happens, right? And then let's say we want to go on, let's do like, I'm not going to have him move because he's in my hands, but we can have him animate. Oh, let's see, we'll drag that one. He's going to turn left and do that. And I can have that connected. And then if I have this, he'd be moving if he wasn't sitting on, he's got like wheels on the bottom. He'd be moving if he wasn't on that. So just some really fantastic things that you guys can do. Now, this is not cheap. This is like $100 and something thing, but chances are in your schools that you're in, if you're in a school setting, there's going to be these tools that are a part of the media center or other locations if there's a robotics club, etc. So just wanted to like definitely put that out there.
Here's a demo of one.
Whoops. So let's move into engineering. And let's think about. I'm sorry, what?
Somebody's asking about more information on coding. Chris Bujai did a whole session last year on AAC in the cloud on AAC and coding. So I'm going to put that link into the Slack.
Yeah. Chris has awesome stuff. He's always my inspiration for thinking about this. This was actually my inspiration for being, and I just reached out to my media specialist and said, can I get, my hands, my former media specialist, can I get my hands on one of these? I actually did buy on Amazon for like $35. I can't, it's right here. It's a very small one. It's called a Teeny Tiny Tech, and it comes also with a free app. And this was only like $35. I haven't played with it as yet because then I got my hands on the Dash and Dot, and it was just so much bigger and there. This is a video by that Scout Mary put together, and if you haven't seen Scout on in any way, you've got to see a presentation with him. I don't know if he's presenting here or not, but I know he's presenting for the AT New Jersey. So Mike Murata, one of his groups, he's presenting July 12th, I believe, a maker's roundtable. Anyways, he talks about making, this is a balloon wind tunnel, but the idea of your learners as makers, so learners as programmers, learners as makers, that they can work together to design, create, and activate engineering projects, blah. So this is creating a balloon wind tunnel, and I'm going to forward through it so we can see just exactly. So this is where it's switch activated. It's put together with PVC pipe, a shower curtain, and balloons, and then some things to connect your switch to it, right? So, but the idea, not just that you're creating it and that the students are activating it, but that they are a part of the creation process, right? So our learners who are augmentative communicators can be makers as well. And I'll just move on from that. And again, I just want to challenge you to think about what the vocabulary that your learners might be able to do. Another thing in engineering is Legos, right? So the regular old Legos, but we also know that sometimes Legos might not be as accessible as we might want them to. There are digital Legos. There's multiple different versions of ones. There's bigger ones, there's smaller ones. But just looking at what I have here on the screen, what core words can you think of that you might use to go with this, right? And what fringe words or personal core might the learner need to access as well? If you guys have some thoughts, put that in the Slack chat. We'd love to hear them. So Kelly's putting in give and put, right? Digital Legos are so cool, right? And again, when we can give our learners who might have fine motor needs, or maybe we're not there. Yeah, Andrea is like, that's a good one to have on there. And I'll go ahead and go into this just so you guys maybe get some ideas, right? So I can put things in, let's see. I'm pretty sure, I know I did this before. I've got to drop them in. Of course, right now I played with this before and now I'm not having, oh, here it's because I need to grab them. So they're,
So we have other words, different.
There we go. I had to, so I can stack them up, right? Just with all of our regular things that we might do with, right? We can stack them up. I can grab a different brick, right? And I can put them on. So next to, right, change, exactly, stop, go. But being able to do this and setting up, you know, you'll have to think about how you might set up some alternative access, but being able to rotate the view and see it from different angles. So there's so much power to this, right? Of being able to, so think about this for your, you know, if you, like as Kelly is still doing Zoom sessions with learners, how that might work for them. Okay, the arts.
All right. So we always knew that we got more information than we have time. So quickly through the arts, think about how your students and your child is communicating during the arts. And Beth, just go ahead and click there. I think if there's more information.
Yeah.
So whether they've got a vocabulary system, a robust vocabulary system that you add to it. This is an example from one of my students whose parent put this together. Hi, Debbie, I see you out there. For her son's participation in music class. And there's a separate one for his other electives as well. The other thing to think about of what we can talk about with music isn't, you know, it isn't just about participating in class, but it's also about who are the artists that we like? What are the websites that we go to? We do literacy activities by rewriting songs. So those are things that we can talk about. I'm going to have you keep going there, Beth. So examples of song lyrics. You know, this is one that Beth has used with some of her students where we, you know, use the repeated line. So we talk about repeated line in story reading, but we also have repeated line in songs, especially in raps. I mean, there's a lot of good repeated line as long as we've got school appropriate vocabulary. Otherwise, we do it at home. But then there are some systems that you'll see, such as TalkSuite, which is an image here, that's built on social communication. And it's built on retelling stories. That whole idea that we retell and we chat familiar stories. And so that can also be a part of talking about how you went to a concert, what you saw, what the songs are, all of those kinds of things just add to the humanity of the vocabulary system and doesn't make it just be so stark as speaking in core, but to add those fringe words of your favorite musical artists and what you're reading or listening to from them. I have students that ask questions to people about what's on your playlist, and we'll go, they have a lot of questions that they ask people that gets that social interaction going. Click, click. And music and we'll get into dance are beyond the word like. A lot of times we use like, but like can be benign when you're talking about what your favorite is and what's the most awesome and fabulous. And so for those of you that are pod users out there, this is from a screenshot from one of my students who, has an opinion. It's her favorite. They're fun and funny. And we're watching Kids Bop a lot. Know all the people. Oh, Beth, your mic is off.
Sorry, the dog was barking and I muted myself. Okay, so again, with that arts, we want to think about theater and drama. Many of the written curriculum that school districts are following include readers' theater and plays as a part of them. You can also find them online, and I'll show you at least one resource for it. But learners can be actors, directors, set designers, backstage hands, writers. Give them the power and think about the language that is going to go along with that, right? Reading A to Z has readers' theater scripts. This is a paid thing, but you can get it for 14 days with a free trial and download a bunch of stuff. I'm not telling you to, whatever, you can download those. A lot of school districts have Reading A to Z subscriptions. It's a pretty common tool that's out there. So look and see even if you didn't think you had it, to be able to have access to that. And I'll just show you really quickly, like an example. This is a kindergarten level readers theater or an early readers theater activity. It happens to be science oriented. This one happened to be like about animals and everything, but it is. Do you want to learn about, so there's all the different parts. Do you want to learn about animals? Can tell you a lot. Let's listen. What mammal is in the deer family? Look at some pictures to help on the wall. So think about what you might be able to pull out for your AAC communicator. Maybe they can share some of the lines, right? And they're going to say, look, right? And they're going to say, help you. We could edit this down, right? There's ways that we can definitely have this so that they can participate and be the actors. And if it's not their thing to be the actor and be on stage, look at the other roles, the other things that have to happen in theater to have this happen. I know theater was a huge part of my growing up. I actually started off in college as a theater major. I just think it's so important to give all of our learners those opportunities to do that as well. So dance, there's so many YouTube things that are out there that give easy choreography for students to be able, learners to be able to engage in and practice. And it's not just for our kids that are ambulatory. There's a lot that's going on out there for wheelchair dancers as well. You can look on TikTok. I was actually searching before and I just didn't have a chance to get it in there. But if you look up this particular group on TikTok, you can see a lot of their videos where you're getting to see individuals who are not ambulatory or who are ambulatory with the assistance of a wheelchair who are in there doing dancing. And it's really, really cool. They have a Facebook page. They actually have free Zoom classes. Some of their things are free Zoom classes, so you can get online with that. And again, think of the language that's going to go with it. Like, I'm not going to play this right now, but he talks about move and down and up. And then we've got dance and we've got, that's cool. And, hip hop, like think about what might be on that learner's device to be able to engage them in that. Whoops, it is going to play it, but that's not my intention. Visual arts. So if you have not checked out Google Arts and Culture, you've got to do it. It's not coming up on my iPad right now. This is linked to it. So you can have it as an iPad app. There are, it's showing dark, like it's not showing what's actually on the screen. So I'm not going to show that there. But So things like you can put yourself into the picture. So there's one of the tools is called Transform Your Photos into Art. It's called Play with Art Transfer. And that's where you actually can take your photos and have them transformed into a particular artist's style. You can use their, another one of their tools that's in there is their Turn Yourself into an Artist. And it's there with their art filter, same thing, where you would be able to pull yourself into that and become a Van Gogh painting or whatever it is that you might be looking at. Plus, being able to reflect on that. There's a fabulous technique called See, Think, Wonder. It's actually one of the strategies in the book that I have coming out with Chris Bouguet and Mike Murata and Karen Janowski that talks about you show learners an image, a photo, of artwork, whatever it is, and ask them to tell you what they see. So think about the vocabulary that might come about when they are what learners are going to see, right? They might say yellow or blue or circle or sun or moon or stars or dark or night or whatever it is. And then you ask them to say, what do they think? Right? What do they think about that? So maybe they think it's sad, or they think it's happy, or they think it's scary. Whatever the vocabulary, there's no wrong or right answers. That's the beauty of it. And then what do you wonder? So again, because there's no right or wrong answers, you can take the communication that users are giving you and have it be a part of that activity. We're gonna go.
When you're doing those kinds of things, look at how AAC communicators are being creative with the vocabulary that they have and the vocabulary that they don't have. I've got a 10-year-old that I'm working with now, and she uses the word not a lot to describe things. So not, and it might be like not morning, not fun, not. And so she's been using that word not as a modifier. And that's also been helping us build what vocabulary she needs to add into her fringe and be more descriptive with some of those words.
That's such a great comment, Kelly. Yeah, that's so important. And the See, Think, Wonder, you don't have to only do that with artwork. You can do it with anything. It could have been with that zoo cam that we saw. It's a great strategy that you can apply to pretty much anything visual. You could do it for auditory as well. So it could be Hear, Think, Wonder. So if you have learners who have visual disabilities and you wanted to switch that up, you could have it be Hear, Think, Wonder. So we're going to dive a little bit into math, and just to be able to for you guys to think about, these are all really important language concepts that are a part of math, like big and little and round and square and tall, quantity ones, more and less, full, empty. Words like compose and decompose, which are very specific mathematical terms, but that you can use with put and take as well. Measurement, right? Location. One of the things that I always want to point out is that academic vocabulary is critical to teach. If you should teach the terms compose and decompose when we're talking about putting things together and taking them apart, whether it is numbers or whether it is shapes. But you can still do your descriptive teaching with that, your descriptive teaching methods. So when we talk about composing a number, we're talking about putting together, putting more. When we talk about decomposing a number, we are making less, right? So I don't want to make people think, oh, I can just use these core words instead of that academic vocabulary. That academic vocabulary is really important, but we can couch it and give access to it even for earlier communicators. Blocks. Think of all the things that you can have with spatial relationships and geometry around block. And block play shouldn't just be in early childhood classrooms. You can have amazing things happen with block play with older students. It is an important critical building block, so to speak, of math and science and technology. I used to have a teacher that put away all of her blocks because she had some really medically fragile students in her classroom, and she had a thrower. And so she's like, I can't have my wooden blocks out because the thrower is going to hit the medically fragile kid with the block. And so we brainstormed to come up with, and we actually found the foam blocks that were larger foam blocks, not just small ones, larger foam blocks. And so that way it wasn't as dangerous for her throwers to be able to, so that there could still be that access to that. And it also allowed for some additional support for those kids too. We found we could use water with those foam blocks, and the adhesion, there's a term, there's a scientific term for that there, a physics term that I can't come up with off the top of my head. The tension, there we go, between the blocks and the water, it would allow it to adhere. So it required a little less fine motor skills. So there's just some different things that you can do there. I'm not going to go into this, but this is a really important concept about block play and the stages of block play. And I'll let Kelly talk now.
Well, and you'll find that there are people that do, adapted math sessions. So we're just giving you some chunks out of here. One of my students that's a completely online student has a math tutor who's a non-special education teacher, non-adapted, like not in this world of assistive technology. And so we've been working this spring on all the kinds of ways that we can adapt it for somebody who can't touch all, there's so many manipulatives in math. And so how can this student use her vocabulary as they're doing activities? And there was a concern about, well, she does know all her shapes. Do we really have to work on patterns? But patterns is an interesting, it's an important foundational concept. And so then we got into, this is the same student that does the knot. So instead of doing patterns of square, circle, we did square, not square, square, not square. And so using her vocabulary as she was directing people to put the patterns together. So be creative around what you run into. The next couple of slides we're going to zing through because these are our lessons learned during virtual teaching. So sites that educators have been using to do things like probability. So you can find, things like coin tosses and dice rolls. And so we can work on concepts of probability and random occurrences. Click, click. If you haven't discovered your own PBS channel, this is off of the PBS Wisconsin, but PBS has so much in the areas of STEAM. Where from videos to watch to teachers giving short lessons. And so this is just, and we're not going to have a chance to play it. But one of the things that's helpful is that I have a variety of educators that are working with students that I consult on. So sometimes it's the paraeducator, sometimes it's in-home support, sometimes it's the parent. It's not always the science teacher. And so being able to give and review, math teacher, being able to review concepts through practice cards like boom cards, watching short videos. So take a look at PBS Learning and all of the wealth of educational content that is there already done for you. Another group that's fun are the Idea Galaxy teachers. So you've got lots of information on concepts of math. They'll have videos, they've got lesson plans to go along with it. They are linked to grade level and concepts so that you can put them in along with your gone for my brain, within the concepts that you're working on as you follow the standards within your school. All right, it's that time.
Just a few more things for you guys to think about.
It's something to just remember is that communication isn't just about drill and practice. When we're trying to get kids to use their AAC systems in the context of the STEAM areas, these are the things that can be fun and motivational. It's meaningful to communicate. It's got a purpose. It's naturally occurring to the activity. And it's not just sit and say words. in that kind of drill and practice format that we know for so many of our students does not carry over into real time. And it can be given in small bits.
So we just want to challenge you. You don't have to put it in the chat now or anything like that, but think about the ability to use STEAM to solve authentic problems. We need to provide autonomy to AAC users and allow them to make choices as to what interests them and what's important to them. And because we know it increases their motivation to communicate effectively. So we really want them to find out what is important for them to research, to solve, to investigate, right? And I'm going to quote Ashley Larcy. I think she might be on here today. So she had a post on Practical AAC a few months ago where she talked about project-based learning. And one of the things she says in that article is and I'll link the article afterwards, what is their project? What do they want to learn more about? And so she used a KWL chart to help them be able to think about what their topics, what the topic that they want to learn more about. And then they had an opportunity to investigate that and research that. So again, what do they want to learn about? Let's give our learners that autonomy. And so thank you guys so much for giving us your time. Yep, got questions. You can post it in the Slack. I think, is that our last slide? I don't even know.
Yeah.
I think so.
Beth, somebody asked a question about how were you showing your iPad?
Oh, okay. So that's an easy one. I use the Reflector app. So it's a program, you download it. I have a PC, not a Mac. And so it's called Reflector. It's free. And it's called Reflector 3. It's from Squirrel is the, I don't know, company, whatever. So, but it's called Reflector 3, and it allows me to mirror my iPad without any cords or anything like that. It just has to be on the same Wi-Fi as my laptop or my desktop, whatever. And I can mirror my my iPad that way, and I use it all the time. It's really, really helpful. Yeah, so it's a good one to know about. So thank you guys.
Yeah.
And we'll put a few more links. This is a live, it's a Google document, and we'll put a few of the things that we didn't post the links for in it. When I woke up in the middle of the night and realized I was like, I don't think I finished my slide deck. All of a sudden it was the 23rd. I was so excited.
Very good. Thanks, everyone.
From all of us at AAC in the Cloud, we'd like to thank you for presenting, and it was so enjoyable, and my hand hurts because I was writing so fast and so hard, because I find that I look at my notes and I look at the slide deck as well after. So it was so enjoyable, and I work with K-12 kids with AAC, and I'm so looking forward to trying some of these things. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys.
Yay.